Sure. Okay, so today my intention is to talk about some more, like we did last time, where we were dealing with giant steps, but talking about navigating complex chord progressions. And really, if you think about what I even mean by that, for a 2-year-old, walking is challenging, right? Walking on the floor without tumbling over is challenging. Everything we do was difficult for us at one point. And so, nothing less of that happens in the world of jazz. If you start trying to play even the basics of walking your way through a chord progression or improvising on so what or something like that, it can be really daunting at first. And so everything we do that we have an easy time with now is something that was not second nature at all and had to be learned in a very methodical way. So what I mean by complex chord progressions, though, is I mean things in which the connections between the chords are unusual, or the key centers reflected come quickly, so that you're changing colors and changing key centers a lot. Those kinds of things. And in some cases, it might even be that the chord types, the types of chords you see, are unusual. So that's really what I mean by complex. It's either structured in a sort of jammed together way, so that you have to get on top of a lot of different changes of key rapidly, or that the ones that are connected together, even if you have some time to figure that out, they're not normal key connections. And what I mentioned last time is we're used to tunes. If you're doing a tune that's in C, got the key center of C, a lot of standards may have one passing chord or two here and there during the entire A section that's a little bit out of the key, or maybe just a change of color, but then the bridge just takes you to F or something like that. Maybe a couple of 3 keys, and there's a lot of standards that do that. Well, those tunes are kind of easier to navigate than ones in which right away on the second measure you're already dealing with an unusual chord color or a change of key. So that's what I'm talking about. And especially ones in which the chords come every 2 beats. So this tune, Moment's Notice by Coltrane, in this case, he was not dealing with third relationships as much as half-step relationships. In other words, in the tune Giant Steps, he does the entire thing based on the 3 keys of B, G, and E flat, and then he just keeps going up and back down. So that's kind of the centers of that song, and it's what makes it so beautiful is those 3 keys are far apart, 3 flats, 1 sharp, 4 sharp, 5 sharps, so they're pretty radically changing colors. But in the case of Moment's Notice, so we do have to understand what 2 5s are. That is, within a key, every chord, every note of a scale generates a chord that's, if you're diatonic to it, has a certain sequence. So in the key of D, the 2 would be, using the notes of the scale, would be minor, or 3 would be minor. So that's a pattern you should definitely explore if you haven't already. Make sure you can play and understand the diatonic chords of every key. So this tune does a bunch of quick 2-5 progressions or 2-5-1s, and the key centers are quite striking, shall we say, and especially at the tempo that it gets played at. So the first thing you have is a 2-5 in the key of D. And then a good rule of thumb is if you can grab within a measure, figure out what the chord progression is doing, and then you start moving through the tune to the right, so to speak, the way we read, and you immediately come to something that's not in that key anymore, just hang on, and if you stay to the right far enough, you'll probably be able to backtrack and figure out what it is. So right away we have a problem. It's 2-5 in D, E minor to A7, and then F minor to B flat 7. Well, you can tell that's a half step away, right? And then it happens to give you the luxury of this one resolves to 1. So it's 2-5 in D, 2-5-1 in E flat. Okay, and then the 4th bar, you're already not in Kansas anymore, right? Because A flat minor is not in E flat. It's not one of the diatonic chords of E flat. The diatonic 4 chord should be A flat major, but it's A flat minor. And then D flat 7 really isn't in E flat. So again, moving to the right, see what you bump into that tells you, oops, we're not in that key anymore. But let's see if I've run into another key center. And sure enough, that happens to be A flat minor 7 to D flat 7 is 2-5 in the key of G flat, but it never has a chance to resolve to its corresponding 1 chord. It's just a quick 2-5, and then it jars you right away, because now we go, whoa, and now I'm not in that key anymore because it's D minor 7 to G7. So that's a 2-5 progression, a tritone away. A flat to D flat, D to G. So that just, even just hearing the bass notes, you can hear how radically changing of colors that is. Right? That's just, they're just far apart. And then now you can tell he's following a pattern. D minor to G7, well, that's 2-5 in the key of C, right? But it never gets to the C. And then another half step, 2-5-1. So just to understand the first 8 bars, it's a 2-5 in D, 2-5-1 in E flat, a quick excursion for just a moment with a 2-5 in G flat. Then the 5th bar, 2-5 in C, 2-5-1 in D flat, and then back to your 2-5 in C. So that is kind of one rule of thumb then. So when you're assessing a tune, try to grab what you can. If you can see a cluster of chords that definitely you can recognize what diatonic key they're in, and then you start moving to the right and you already, whoa, what key is this in? Just keep going and you probably can backtrack and figure out, oh, I see how come that worked. And then there's another thing that'll happen sometimes, which is what you could call an overlapping function. There's sometimes a chord that pivots, so it belongs in the key that you were just in, and it's part of the next key, or it can be viewed that way anyway. So what's really cool about that is when you do the 2-5 in C, 2-5-1 in D flat, and then you do this 2-5 in C again, but it doesn't resolve to C major. The very next chord on the, what bar would that be? The 9th bar is a C minor chord. So here's going to be an overlapping function. 2-5, it sounds like it should go to C major, but it's C minor. And it turns out to be just part of a sequence now that's a 3-6 with a tritone sub. I'll talk about that in a second. 3-6-2-5 A flat. So again, how would I interpret that as being part of A flat? Well, I won't know at first. You have to keep going to the right and go, wait, where did this C minor come from? Oh, if I go far enough and I get 2 more bars later and I get this, now we're home to A. There's A flat. Woo. So that C minor chord acts like a pivot, because I just did a 2-5 to get there, but it turns out to be part of a long sequence to get you to A flat. And then you get this, you just use it at the end of bar 4, there's A flat minor 7, right? A flat minor 7 to D flat 7 again. That strange little G flat pivot, right? It doesn't resolve to G flat, it goes to G minor 7. And now we get that same little pattern again. It's a 2-5 in F, followed by a 2-5-1 in G flat. So isn't that cool? What he's definitely experimenting with here is little clusters of quick 2-5s that are a half step lower than the key you're about to resolve in. So 2-5 in D, 2-5-1 in E flat, forget the G flat, 2-5 in a second, then 2-5 in C, quick 2-5 in D flat, then the pivot into C minor, which turned out to be part of a sequence to get to A flat. So that's almost like 3 bars. You can kind of wipe your brow and go, whew, I'm in A flat for a second, even with those little substitute chords in there. Then this little jig back and forth, 2-5 in G flat, 2-5 in F, 2-5-1 in G flat. And then this beautiful thing, F minor 7 and B flat 7 are 2-5 of E flat, which we don't even get to land on the E flat. We land on the key of D again and then slip into the E flat. So this tune is just full of jagged little jarring half-step shapes and 2-5s, and then this super clever thing where he gets to G flat 2-5 again, but he dips you down and back up. Okay, so So that's kind of the first step of navigating, if you will, is to just understand what a tune is doing. You know, before I come to a tune and just try to throw my crap on it, you know, what little I know and what I think I want to play, it's better to try to step back and understand what the tune is telling you and play within that first. Then you can superimpose your own favorite licks, your own, you know, alterations, if you will, whatever. That's just a great rule of thumb. Let's understand and play the tune as it is first, and then you can find a whole lot of mileage, especially out of a tune like this. Man, if you're even just, quote, making the changes, making those color changes, you'll sound like $1,000,000. But before you even superimpose and feel like you understand it, let's make sure we get a grasp on what the composition is telling us first. Okay, so then navigating. Well, you know, when it comes to anyone's respective instrument, there's going to be things endemic in what lays well, what the role is. For example, a chord player, you know, a keyboard or guitar player, you need to work on chord voicings that have these 2/5 connections, so that those are. By the way, I think I'll be able, in a delayed way, I think I'll be able to see questions from you. Let me just scroll up a little bit and see if it's showing me that. I don't know if I'll see them or not, but anyway, theoretically, I could see a question a few seconds late. I did one the other day, and someone's posted, looks like it would make a great first dance tune, so that kept me laughing. But anyway, if you have a question, I think it might fit under the streaming, but I'm not sure. I thought I'd see them, but I don't see any now. So never mind. I'm not stop messing with it. My grand theory of being able to see these isn't working this way for some reason. Maybe they're showing up on my homepage instead of in the event. Anyway, never mind about that. So if I miss a question, I'm sorry. But so navigating it means, first of all, what you understand about the tune. Second of all, then understanding the little components within it that are relevant to your instrument. But for me, as a bass player, one of the first things I demonstrated last time is, let's make sure we understand where the notes of these keys are, and not just in one position, not just with your favorite, well, there's my D major scale, here's my E flat, which, again, I'm playing that quickly, but, you know, there's plenty to refine, just even making sure that's in tune and sounds good, etc., and plays comfortably. No, it's not enough to just have your own little favorite scale fingering. You have to know where the notes of that key are everywhere on the bass. Just like you have to know every note on a saxophone. Of that entire sound of color of that key, you have to know it everywhere, up and down the entire instrument. You have to know that on every instrument. The notes, and it's practical for a bass player, for one thing, for just tuning. Let me just show you one little exercise. There's many ways to slice this. I demonstrated a little bit last time, but it's what you could call a position survey. You just play the notes of that key center in that position, then go to the next one and come back down, and either using pivots or not. So this is for bass players only. See what I just did? I moved to the next sort of cluster of notes in that key that I can play. With or without a pivot, you can play literally what you could play literally what's reachable under your hand with a 3/2 step reed, or you can do these little 1/2 step pivots to play the complete shape of the scale, right? So just think how valuable that is, to be able to play that scale in tune. And I'm talking and playing at the same time, so it may not be 100% in tune, but to be able to play that scale sound and visualize where those notes are everywhere on the bass. Well, look how helpful that is, because the very next key is now E flat. And so I got to be able to play the notes of E flat in every position too. You got the idea, okay? So how does that come into play that's helping me now as a bass player to navigate it? First of all, let's talk about bass lines. I dealt with this last time, but one of the easiest things that'll help give you some freedom in navigating, walking through a tune like this is don't try to make every root. Don't try to get to every root. It's just, I mean, some roots is great, but if you try to hit every one, your line is naturally going to be... See how boxy and jagged that is? Again, some of that shape is great, but it's going to get real tiring real quick. But if you can navigate through the key center and just target the first or second chord of the 2-5, for example. So what if I play... So just play that for the first measure. Here's E minor 7 to A7, but I don't get to the A until beat 4. And I'm not even thinking about the A because I'm thinking of the A as leading me to the B flat. So now on the second measure, I'm not even playing the F. I'm just playing B flat. So that's the first two measures. I could have played that in 7th grade. No, I didn't start bass till 8th grade. Okay, I could have played it in 9th grade. And that's a pretty reasonable clip, right? Okay, so kind of aiming through the key center. And then what if you did want to do something in which you leap, arpeggiate, if you will. Play a big shape. I just finished knocking that, but what if you wanted to jump around? Right? That's the first measure. I'm just thinking E minor. Now I'm thinking F minor. So that could be the first two measures, right? Now I aim for the 5th. So E, B, D, E. And now I'm just coming down through F minor, not even worrying about the B flat, and I get to the 5th. And then what if I play this shape? So I didn't even worry about playing a full E flat type measure. I'm not worrying about playing the arpeggio. I just play 5th, root, 5th, and I'm targeting a half step away from the A flat that I need next. So now you're going to get some crazy flexibility and freedom, really, by just being able to visualize the notes of this. So now I got this little zigzag to do. Here I will play root to root. What's the next chord? D minor 7. I'm a half step away from the 5th of that. So I could get this for my first 4 measures. This beautiful combination of super jagged and super smooth and easy under your hand. Stuff like that will come to me now when I'm trying to play. And it's born of having angles on, having a handle on where the notes of that key are everywhere. And then I can quickly see, like someone was changing flashcards, I could quickly see the next here and see the next key that's coming. And it helps me connect them smoothly, okay? So now here I am on the 5th of the D minor chord, okay? What could you do? Well, how about this occurs to me, and I'm just seeing it a little bit. So, again, I could play anything, but I'm on the 5th. I'm going to target the half step to the G7 chord, and then I'm just aiming for the E flat. So I got a shape that I didn't think of that yesterday or anything, but I could see it in front of me. So here's the A flat to D flat to the rest of that. So this is measure 4. Okay, so just kind of take your time and work out all the key centers first, and then I guess this might be a good pivot to make into working on soloing on this, something like this. But there's a quote that I'm not entirely sure it's 100% reliable, but I've seen it referenced in different places, so it probably is based on something that he said. But I heard that Bill Evans was noted for saying that I'd rather spend an hour playing through one tune than work on 6 tunes in an hour. And then, of course, the assumption is that he didn't just spend his whole life playing on one tune, that he moved around and learned different tunes at that level. But literally to play for an hour with very little stopping through one tune, but in a relaxed way, you'll work your way through the it's kind of like you know how a football team has plays they can chart out and map and everyone memorizes where they're going, and then the quarterback might have to make a decision who to throw the ball to, but those are worked out plays that don't have much to do with what the opponent is going to do. But a basketball team or soccer team, their version of working out plays is just to try all kinds of contingencies because they have no idea where the ball's going to be or who's going to have it or whatever. It's more like that. It's closer to that. It's like working out in advance what the contingencies might be. So spending an hour just playing rubato through the tune, literally like this, okay? So I'll do it first kind of bass oriented, and then I'll do it maybe soloing wise. These are all quarter notes, but they're not in tempo. I'm just thinking about connections. And I'm thinking of things I can know that in the heat of battle I could sort of reasonably comfortably reach. And if I really get onto something that I go, oh man, I gotta make sure I remember that, well, then I might stop and review it and memorize it, so to speak. Or if I get kind of befuddled and I'm, you know, working my way through a tune that I don't know at all, I might do it slower than that. So that's already not a shape I would like. So. So you got the idea, okay? In compressed time, I was working my way up toward an actual pretty bright clip on it, but you just spend your time, just take your time, explore all those connections. And then, frankly, some tunes are worthy of just pulling apart 4 bars at a time, or 1 bar even, and just spend all your time just looping one little part of the tune that's kind of tricky. Okay, so that probably is enough time spent on that. Okay. Let me take us to another tune, okay? And I had this one dialed up. I was going to play along with it, but it's not necessary. Let me dial up this other one I pulled up for you, and it's ESP. Okay, come on. Wake up. See if it recognizes ESP. No, it didn't. It doesn't like it without the periods. So let me put in Wayne Shorter by composer. It found it. There it is, ESP. Okay. So pull up the lead sheet for ESP if you would. This tune is hard in another way. First of all, it does give you the sort of breathing space that on the first 8 bars, the chords last for 2 measures. So that's kind of cool. So even at a bright tempo, let's see what the real book default temp, the iReal default tempo is 240. So let's listen how bright that is. I'll turn up a little bit so I can hear that. All right, so that's a pretty bright tempo, right? By any standard, that may be about the record tempo, or they may have done it a tiny bit faster than that. But at least you get to spend 2 bars on each of the chords on the first 8 bars. But they're, again, jarringly not quite in related keys. The first chord is E7. It just calls the E7 altered, and that generally means, if you just see the word alt or ALT, it means that with quite a bit of discretion on the behalf of the player, it means that the fifth is probably raised or lowered. So instead of E7 with a B in it, it means there's probably a B flat or a C. So it's either a flat 5 or a plus 5. It's still going to have a seventh. But it also means that the ninth is probably altered. So it means an F or a G, or it should be, I guess you would call it a, what would you actually call it? An F or a F sharp, F double sharp. So, okay, so that means if you got to alter the fifth and you got to alter the ninth, the only scale that really gives you that sound all in one little package, and again, it's fine if you have the other ways to slice this, but if you basically play the F melodic minor, then look at what it gives you. Here's an F, that's your flat 9. Sharp 9 is G, there's your third, A flat, which is really G sharp. There's your flat 5, there's your raised fifth, there's your 7th. So F melodic minor. Well, look at what's awesome about that. The second chord is, whoo, F major. I know that one. How much difference is there between F melodic minor and F major? One note. Cha-ching! The A flat goes to A natural, and everything else is the same. Well, doesn't that make that a lot more special? So even at that bright tempo, listen to that. F melodic minor. Okay, so so you see what I mean? I played stuff that I knew would work for F melodic minor, and then I played stuff that I knew would work for F major. Back to F melodic minor for the next E7 alter. And then the next chord is E flat major 7 sharp 11. Okay, well, where do you get the sharp 11 from? And well, there's a couple ways to get at this. First of all, you can memorize all the patterns of what you get generated out of the diatonic chords. That's helpful. But the way I just did it is a good one. If I know I need a sharp 11, just start making a scale up all on your own. E flat, it's a major 7, so I know I need those notes. But, so I put an F in there, that's the natural second scale degree. There's your third, and I need sharp 11, not A flat, but A natural. So, there's the like that. Okay, anyway, so look at what scale we've built. If you do it that way, E flat, F, G, A, B flat, C, D, well, that's just the fourth mode of B flat major. So that is very cool. Now you can see that it's not as scary as it looks. The roots don't look like they're connected at all because they're going in half steps. There's E7 to F major, E7 to E flat. Okay? But in terms of scale colors, it's not that jarring at all. It's F melodic minor to F major to F melodic minor to B flat major. How different are F major and B flat major? One note different, right? Just one note different. So basically two notes change going from that F melodic minor. The A flat goes to A, and the E natural goes to E flat. What? Okay, so I'd probably have to say that again slowly a few times to grasp it myself, but so now I can play from F melodic minor to F major to F melodic minor to B flat major. Isn't that helpful? I hope that was. Again, I'm not even, I know this is just surface scratching, and maybe redundant for some of you that already know this, but can you see how helpful it is to not play my own superimposed thing onto the tune until I know what the tune is telling me? And then just a couple of pragmatic things that might be another layer of thinking about getting a handle on. I'm making a big assumption that even after you've explored where all the notes of a certain key are, I'm making an assumption that you know what to do with that. But here's a great sort of direction to go. Of course, always emulate and imitate great players. Learn licks, learn favorite shapes, learn entire solos. That's all great. That's like learning to speak English by imitating your parents. That is what you do. But just built within kind of the rudiments of even learning an instrument, think about all the sort of implicit melodic shapes that are built into what you practice if you really stop and think about what you're doing. So, for example, just even these basic kind of Hanon-like things, right? Etc. I mean, you could just really work that. I mean, playing them in different positions and putting them in all keys, and those become technically difficult. But listen to what that actually sounds like. Those are melodic, what we recognize as being kind of sort of basic kernel of melodic shapes. So there's all that available to you. Just spend time exploring them. Make sure you actually can do those shapes and have them under your hands, have them in your head, have them in your voice, you know, so that you hear those shapes. And then, of course, there are shapes that stand out as not being in that. They're not as recognizable. Anything that's fourth related, those are just strikingly unusual shapes, and or big intervals, right? Anything that's complex in that way, even if it's relatively simple, compressed down, but as soon as you break it out into larger intervals, piano players always kill me with that because they can just go finger, right? You know, guitar players learn that stuff, but you know, anyway, that's playing big shapes. Let me just think about it instead of just jabbering. So if I was to take that F melodic minor and just break the notes out into some unusual. Okay, so just by playing rather jagged and unusual shapes can be helpful, but way back there in your development and in your you know, stuff you learned when you were first in junior high or playing your instrument in high school, there's stuff built into what we tend to do learning an instrument that it's easy to forget. I mean, just trying to take, I was literally doing this yesterday with my bow, and I was taking the bow into my mic stand there, but I was just taking this. So needs a little rosin, but anyway, so doing that, okay, well that's where it had it in the book, right? And it's a booger because it's got a sixth in it and some big intervals. And then I thought, can I do that on all 12 keys? It took me 30 minutes to play that in all 12 keys, and I was tired at the end of it. But what did I just give myself? I gave myself a melodic review of little melodic nuggets that can come into play. Okay, so, and then one final little kind of suggestion for practicing that I have, you can see the time, okay, 1:36. So we're doing okay on time, but I want to wrap this up pretty quickly. I'm always at the risk of swamping some people and boring others. So anyway, but here's one thing I've done. Once I've explored and know what the key centers basically are, and I don't have time to do the rest of this tune, but it's just fascinating. It's got all kinds of nice little surprises in it. But once I've explored that, here's one little thing to spend some time doing. First of all, with no tempo at all, I want you to target a note that's in the first chord. Just any note that's in the first chord. So let's just say with E7 altered. So I'll focus on D. Now look at the next chord, F major 7. Well, is that diatonic to F? Yes, it is. It happens to be the 6th, and in this case, not every note of the scale works this way, but the 6th, or 13th, if you want to think of it that way, is a lovely color note. So when the chord changes to F major 7, I don't actually have to change notes. I can keep the D, and then I go back to E7. And the next chord is E flat major 7. Is there a D in that? Sure is, it's the major 7. And then the next chord is D7, so that's the root. Now, finally I get to a note where I need to change it. E flat 7. And then all you do there is just decide what direction to go. And I guarantee you, in one direction or other, you're only a half step away from a note that will work. In this case, let's just go down to D flat. So it's E flat 7. So I'll play the 7th of that note. So I go from, after, what is it, 8, 9 bars of D, I play 1 bar of D flat, and then the next chord is E7 again. I can go back to the D, and then the 2 chords there are F major 7 and E flat, so the D stays, and then I've got D minor 7, there's the root, G7, there's the 5th, G minor 7, and then I've got a G flat 7. I can go to E flat, the 6th, or D flat. So, in context, here's what I'm talking about doing. After you are sure of where you're going with what notes you're trying to keep versus change, then turn on the tempo, especially on something rapid like this, and focus on nothing but rhythm. Play those target notes, those hanging there notes that only move by a half step, and just play a rhythmic solo. Yeah, I moved from a D, eventually I moved to a C, and then I could keep the C even longer. But man, does that ever make you think. First of all, it helps you relax into the tempo. I need to practice fast tempo soloing as much as anybody. It's always kind of the Himalayas to me, but in any case, that's one little trick that I've developed that'll help me, and it also can be kind of a nice little motivic thing to move into, even on a regular linear type solo. If you get into a section where you're kind of emphasizing a target note, etc. So that can be really neat because people can hear that. They can hear that there's a note that's hanging there between all the chords that you're building on melodically and rhythmically. So, all right. So I think that's probably enough for today. I'm sorry I didn't wind up being able to see the questions, but hope that was valuable. Next week I will plan on doing something related to tune learning and building a repertoire. Beginning with jazz repertoire, I'll say it that way. Okay, thank you all. If you want to tip me, again, Venmo and PayPal. People have been doing that, and it's such a blessing. Thank you. I'll put the Venmo and PayPal right under this video in the comments. Okay? Thank you all. Take care. Bye-bye.